Niccolo Machiavelli is a famous writer from the 1400s who has several known works and quotes about how people should live their lives. Born in Italy in 1469, he was seen as a political philosopher. This story is seen almost as an instruction manual, where he taught rulers how to govern more ruthlessly, but at the same time he also showed the ruled how they were being led. Income inequality has led to the downfall of leaders and empires throughout history. According to Inequality.org, income includes the revenue streams from wages, salaries, interest on a savings account, dividends from shares of stock, rent, and profits from selling something for more than you paid for it. Income inequality refers to the extent to which income is distributed in an uneven manner among a population. As seen on the graph, the top 0.1% of the U.S. population rakes in 188 times the amount that the bottom 90% makes combined. Globalization and technology has played an important role in why income inequality is such a prevalent issue in today's economy. Outsourcing and the relocation of companies and jobs overseas has led to a dramatic decrease in domestic jobs, which causes less wealth to be able to be gained by the working class. One example of this would be Hoover in the Great Depression. The Great Depression was one of the most devastating hits to the U.S. economy. After the stock market crashed, banks went under, and millions of people were left without jobs and struggled to survive and provide for their families. President Hoover was greatly to blame for the worsening depression because of his political philosophy that issues within the economy will eventually work themselves out. According to Leonidas Donskis, Machiavelli claims that cruelty was necessary, or at least, in modern parlance, a socially efficient solution. Hoover's actions were seemingly cruel, but he decided that it was needed in order for the country to get well on its own. He was incorrect in thinking this, but it fits Machiavelli's view on solving problems. He believed in a limited role for government and worried that excessive federal intervention posed a threat to capitalism and individualism. He felt that assistance should be handed on a local, voluntary basis. Accordingly, Hoover vetoed several bills that would have provided direct relief to struggling Americans. Hans Küng states that it was Machiavelli's conviction that the politician who aimed to be successful sometimes had to act immorally. Hoover thought he was doing a service to the country by denying help, another action that coincides with one of Machiavelli's teachings. As the Depression worsened throughout his term, people trusted and supported Hoover less and less, and he was very easily defeated the next term by FDR. Even though people strongly voiced their dissatisfaction with Hoover, he still did nothing to sway them. In Studies of Machiavellianism by Richard Christie, he writes that Machiavelli was less concerned with abstractions and ethical judgments than with pragmatic advice. Hoover was clearly unconcerned with the struggles of the American people and just wanted to do things his way, whether they worked out or not. An economic model that allows the richest members of society to accumulate a larger and larger share of the cake will eventually self-destruct. It is a lesson that is yet to be learned. Isel Mendez-Pecdemir hypothesized that individuals being very much fond of money are more likely to represent upper-level Machiavellian personality and are more likely to exhibit upper-level, unethical behavior. These results can be explained via the dark side of money that induces an individual to engage in unfair practices. Machiavelli would probably say something along the lines of, "I told you so." Throughout his teachings, he preached about how greed would lead to the downfall of civilizations. He wished to promote the happiness of everyone by showing what would happen if those in power were overtaken with greed and hunger for wealth. Another example would be the Gulch. The Gulch is a proposed site for extreme land development in downtown Atlanta. The costs are expected to be at around $5 billion, with around $2 billion expected to come from public financing. Visions for the Gulch include 1,000 units of residential and 1,500 units of hotel space. This sparked a huge debate on the issue of public money being used towards private enterprises. Many argue that an increase in luxury housing will raise rents and property taxes in low-income communities near downtown. Machiavelli would likely be against this, as he writes about rejecting and not exploiting civic divisions which weaken the whole nation, and striving to ensure the public's general satisfaction. Liberality, which is defined as the quality of giving or spending freely, can be seen as a negative thing if you don't do it in a way that benefits you. He writes, if one exercises it honestly and as it should be exercised, it may not become known, and you will not avoid the reproach of its opposite. However, he later writes, therefore it is wiser to have a reputation for meanness, which brings reproach without hatred, than to be compelled through seeking a reputation for liberality to incur a name for rapacity which begets reproach with hatred. He explains that the best option would be not to seek liberality because you would be met with hatred from others. Still now, it is better to be modest and not try to flash and flaunt your wealth, because people may take it the wrong way and begin to think negatively about you. Machiavelli believed that the best rulers hold power not by sneakiness, but by intelligence, tough-mindedness, and refinement through personal trial. They who come to the princedom by virtuous paths acquire with difficulty, but keep with ease. He notes that it may be necessary to have some liberality if one wants to hold a position of power. He states that it is one of those vices which will enable him to govern, meaning you should be liberal to an extent. Ernest Buttery states that a wise prince, according to Machiavelli, maintains his supremacy by the divide and rule principles practiced by a Cesare Borgia. This strategy seems to be more suitable to the principality and possibly even to building empires. Cesare Borgia was a knight who was revered for his political status as well as being very courageous, and he and Machiavelli were very close.